Welcome to the Executive Insights podcast, brought to you by AWS, where we address vital questions and share unique perspectives from leaders at the intersection of business and technology.
Hello, this is Tanuja Randuri, Vice President and Managing Director of Europe, Middle East and Africa for Amazon Web Services. Welcome to another episode of Executive Insights, our CEO series. In this series, I will be speaking with leaders from across the EMEA region about what it takes to transform business and society, how they are leveraging data and technology to accelerate growth and innovate, and their insights on topics such as sustainability and addressing the digital skills gap. We will also be providing a glimpse into the personalities behind some of our great leaders of industry. From intern to chief business officer, today's guest has helped shape one of the world's most influential travel platforms, guiding it through market shifts, rapid growth, and a global pandemic. Over the past 15 years, he's held leadership roles across nearly every part of the business, from customer service to product, operations, and HR. And that breadth has given him a rare, holistic view of how tech, people, and strategy intersect at scale. He's credited with steering the company's core business to record growth post-COVID, including a 20% uplift in alternative accommodation supply, fueling new demand across homes and apartments. And behind the scenes, he's known for his quick thinking, sharp decision-making, and deep understanding of people and platforms. And I do know, having spoken to him earlier today, that his degree was in anthropology and human evolution, which I kind of see now how this all connects up. From bones to where he is today, a thoughtful, fast-moving leader with a sharp eye for innovation. James Water, welcome to Executive Insights.
Thank you, and thank you for that intro, by the way. It's the nicest series of things I've heard about myself for a very long time. It's quite nice to summarize 15 years in 1.5 minutes as well, and starts me thinking as well, I guess, about the things that have changed in that time.
It's impossible to do that, really. I mean, your career has been phenomenal. And in fact, I did want to start there a little bit, James. You know, you started as an intern at Booking.com, and then 15 years later, you're now Chief Business Officer, having pretty much had a hand in every part of the business. I mean, looking back on that journey, were there specific moments along that journey that made the biggest difference?
You're right. I joined as an intern. I mean, I arrived literally as a temp who was supposed to be in the building for one day, covering for a sick receptionist, to put it super simply. And a day was a week, and a week was a month, and a month was the holidays. And then I came back just in 2008. I actually joined in July on a 6-month contract, and on the 31st of December was the day that I got an extension into the next year. So there's a few different moments, some of which were luck, some of which maybe more decisions. Still owe my line manager at the time for that one, by the way. The company had a hiring freeze, and I know he literally sat outside the CEO's office and said, look, please, if you're going to sign one contract, sign this one. One of the key decisions was his to do that. For me, honestly, silly analogy, if you don't mind. You remember, I'm going to put my generation here, but the Friends theme song. You've never had your day, your week, your month, or even your year. I've always thought a little bit, if you have a bad day, yeah, whatever, get up, pick yourself up, go again. Same with a week. If it's a month, you think why? And if it's a year, probably should have changed something. Honestly, I've just never really woken up wanting to go and work somewhere else, so I haven't. And I've always enjoyed coming here. I think we're a good meritocracy. And I've been given a massive opportunity to do different things. And you've run through, I've been in product, I've been in customer service, I've been in HR. The company could have gone and found somebody much better qualified than me on paper to do pretty much all of those, and they gave me the chance. And so I think that's been a real drive in keeping me here. And then I've just really enjoyed the culture and the people. It's actually why I asked them to give me a job full time. It wasn't about hotels or accommodations or online as such. I just think your universe that you spend your time in is so shaped by those, 10, 15, 20 people that you spend a lot of time with. And I've always enjoyed that group.
I love that. I mean, this point about culture is so important. I think it's becoming even more important today as we think about where we are from a technology perspective in the world, right? What was it about Booking.com's culture? What would you point to specifically?
When I joined, in the early years I was here, the company's culture was really exacerbated there were 8 statements from the CEO of things that we built everything around. I liked a couple of things about it. One is it was very simple. 2 is it was really grounded in the sort of humble origins of the people who ran the company. Like one of the phrases was milk the cows every day. Well, what he meant was there's things that just need to get done every day. Go get them done and get them done well. And there was such an energy, there was such a pace to what we were doing. And there was a real customer focus, experimentation focus, the customers in the middle. Something that I think Amazon obviously has been known for from the beginning. Many companies would talk about now. 2008, 2009, 2010, there weren't that many that were doing it, saying it, living it, putting data on top of it, bringing technology to bear for customer. And I think they did that very, very well. And I'm competitive like many of us. And I quite like being successful, to be honest. And the company was growing really well. So the combination of speed, energy, customer focus, it's something that was in the digital space that we thought would work for the future, for me was really appealing.
How do you keep that alive as you grow globally, and you have, right? How do you keep that experimentation, that ethical decision making, that integrity and customer obsession at the core? How do you maintain that given the growth?
Something somebody said to me once was, look, culture is just what people think they have to do to be successful every day. They follow what's around them. So ultimately, if you want to keep something going, you need to keep it going. You need to be active. You need to be conscious. If somebody in a group or an area doesn't fit it, you need to address it, because otherwise you're just going to gradually see this erode and fade. But I also think you've got to be equally conscious about which bits need to change. I mean, in the time I've been here, we've had multiple generations of leadership, so to speak, at the top of the company. I could divide it into epochs, if you want to call it that, and think about who led the company, different stage, different skill set, different approach. So you're also balancing, when do we need to be more coordinated and more organized? And when I began, it was truly full autonomy. It was this group of people own this metric, do whatever you will, off you go. And when talking between supply and marketing meant getting up, walking around the other side of the desk and talking to the person there, that pretty much worked. It's not going to fly today. And so you've had to go through those iterations of, well, what systems do have to come on top so that your culture is not just the symbols and the behaviors that people see, but also the processes and the systems that go with it, and being conscious about evolving those. You've got to be very conscious as well about the different types of work you're doing in different places. If you're building platforms, you're going to have longer planning, more predictability, less sort of iterative innovation. If you're putting something in terms of web interfaces together, you can have far more short-term plans, see what sticks and move. So I think it's balancing those. And then it's, how do you talk about the successes? Or maybe a different way of framing it, how do you talk about the failures as successes was one of the big things we used to do. I remember for years, literally pasted on doors, pasted in the toilet doors, et cetera, where you couldn't fail but read it, would be the failure of the month. And it would be somebody senior, successful, respected, explaining something they did that went completely wrong. Why? What did they learn? And I think one of the things that the leaders of early days I was here did really, really well was promoted up front pretty quickly. If you want to innovate, you will fail. It is okay to fail. In fact, it's good to fail. It means you tried something. The only thing is, you got to learn from it.
There's so much in our DNAs that are actually quite similar. It's not just about that founder's mindset and operating like a startup, experimentation, letting people go off and do things. It's actually also building mechanisms into the core of what you do. There's a tension there, which you have to balance quite well. Because sometimes people will say, oh my God, those processes and mechanisms are making us kind of like slow. But actually, they don't have to, done right.
I agree. Bad processes make you slow. Good processes help. I mean, in the end, how often is a delay because we're debating? How often is a debate because the boundaries weren't understood or known? That happens a lot. Humans are like electric current. They follow the path of least resistance. If you can make the thing that you want to happen easier than anything else, the likelihood that it happens is extraordinarily high. If you make people do something very different or very difficult, they're unlikely to go down the path. So if you want to be a heavily data-driven, experimentation-linked culture, you make sure the workflows that people are used to are data-heavy, have the right insights, setting up experiments is simple, and on and on and on. And I think this, for me, this culture sets us up very well for where we are now. The world's changed extraordinarily in technology capabilities in the last couple of years. I don't believe anybody fully knows where that's going to go. Even the most informed CEOs of the biggest companies have a different view. So they can't all be right. Likelihood is none of them are exactly right. And so when we talk about how do we set ourselves up for, to me, a lot of our sort of history of being willing to be agile and change direction, our willingness to try things, our willingness to think through the sort of the scientific method of hypothesis and how do I validate, that's actually what sets us up best probably to continue to deliver for customers in the AI era, because we don't know. So the question is, well, how can you organize yourselves to try the most things and learn the most things from the things that you try? That's probably the question you can answer. And hopefully the 15, 20, 25 years we've got behind us of doing that will apply relatively well going forwards as well.
We hope you're enjoying this discussion. To join the conversation and engage with other business leaders on these topics, follow AWS Executive Insights on LinkedIn.
How are you at Booking thinking about ensuring that that core culture, the way you work, all of that continues, but you're also embracing rapidly this new technology while balancing, all that comes with it, responsibility, risk, etc. How are you organizing yourselves?
You mentioned the anthropology piece. I did biological and skeletal morphology things. So it was roughly 50% maths and science, 50% argumentation and logic. And I'm not the best at either, but I can do a bit of both. It's probably the one helpful thing. But it means the culture piece appeals to me. It inherently links back to that. And I think one of the things that's easy to forget, especially if companies move on from the original founders, is that your culture evolves constantly, whether you like it or not. We always talk about us being shaped by the culture. I think we forget that we also shape the culture, and it's a constant two-way. We've had culture on our list of priorities as a company for several years now by intent. And it isn't always the same thing we're working through, but it's going to go somewhere, so you better define where you want it to go. And so think about it in the AI universe. For us, we've always been very centered on customer, very much what's the customer need, how do we solve it? And then technology is a tool to solve that. It's not technology for the sake of technology. We believe that's really important because this is something newer and shinier than anything you've ever seen. And it's very easy to get excited with what you can do and not necessarily think about what you should do. So we've tried to reemphasize that element of our culture. We very early wrote down our AI principles and signed up to things like the EU AI Act principles ahead of time, et cetera. So we were upfront with that, which we think sends a message and a symbol to everybody that it really matters how you use this. We did research fairly quickly on how travelers felt this was, or was not, by the way, changing their core travel needs. And perhaps not hugely surprising, it doesn't really change the needs. It may change the power to answer those needs, but the needs are probably fairly constant. So again, we reaffirmed that pretty quickly. That gave us a framework. And then we started to think like many did. We said, look, we probably need a balance here. Booking's made a lot of investments and success over the years about what we often call democratization of something. I'm going to use experimentation as the core because that's something we're known for. We have a team in the middle of the company who own experimentation. And they own the tools that are used, the systems, the expertise, also the learning materials that go to market to employees, the skilling and the upskilling. And the model really is have a group in the middle who are world-class experts, make them world-class experts, support them to be there, and make everybody else 80% of that without actually having to be that because of the work that's done. It's kind of how we thought about democratization. And so we basically thought about AI and Gen AI in the same way, was to say, look, we need to have some people in the middle, some platform elements, some rules of the road, some expert guidance that people can go to. But the vast majority of the implementations that are going to be done over the coming years will not be by that group in the middle, it'll be by everybody else. So one of our metrics is how many of the use cases can be self-served by people outside of that central pool. And we also tried to be very clear that we wanted to do the most impactful things, not necessarily the most visible. And sometimes a super visible change is super powerful. Sometimes a super visible change doesn't lead to a lot of impact. And very often, an invisible to the front of the line change makes a big difference from behind the scenes. And we tried to make sure, again, that we were thinking impact rather than visibility. I mentioned earlier this idea of the culture being driven by these 8 statements. It was called the booking formula. One of them was workhorses, not show ponies. It's what we do, not what we talk about. So again, this is kind of our manifestation of that. And then the final lens you mentioned was about risk and regulatory, et cetera. That's what's changed the most since I joined to now is the scale of booking, the scale of regulation, the complexity. As a travel company, we're operating in almost every country in the world. We have accommodations in one country being booked by somebody who's in another country with a third passport using a payment method from a fourth country via a marketing partner in a fifth. That's where the world's had to change. And that's where, you've got to go back and really think about how do we organize our data? How do we organize our structures to allow us to be compliant on top? So different things there. Some of them are probably how do you manifest at scale the same things that we were thinking about 15 years ago. That one, I think, is a very, very different universe now than it was even 5 years ago.
I really like some of the things you've pulled out here. One about how you create the core of what's needed for the edge to be incredibly innovative at scale, that democratization factor that you're talking about. But then I also think a lot of the things that stood for you in the past are also going to stand for you in the future. I mean, I think, why would all the things we've done so far not actually be super applicable, right? To your point about putting the customer at the core of what you're doing and driving from there rather than technology for technology's sake, or, this point about ownership and, you talked about autonomous groups of people getting out there and getting stuff done, dealing with the day-to-day. None of that necessarily changes. It's maybe the how, the way we work will be different.
Yeah, think back many, hundreds of years. The Industrial Revolution was going to mean that there were no jobs. Well, that's not what happened. Much more recently, the internet popped up. That was going to cause a complete compression in economy. There won't be enough jobs for people. Well, the service economy popped up. So I think knowing exactly what it will be is hard. The likelihood that human ingenuity and creativity pushes the boundary forward, I think, is extremely high. And powerful though Gen AI is, and obviously the world will move on and it may get even more powerful. I mean, in essence, it predicts the most likely next thing. It can take patterns that exist and do new things. It can't have a creative and innovative thought in and of itself. That's not how it's built, and that's not what it's able to do. Humans can. So I think there's probably a courage element here as well. The braver people are to embrace the technology and use it for the things it can do, the more time they will have to think of the things that it can't and they can. And there's an element of courage to go down that path. It could be easy to be like, well, if I allow it to take over what I do today, I've got nothing to do tomorrow. I think that's an unlikely outcome personally.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was thinking a lot about some of the things we've been working on recently. And of course, you said something early on in our conversations, you've got to get the data structures right. You've got to make sure your foundation technology is in place. You've got to make sure that you can access this data set. You have the rules around who can access, et cetera. Then you can start to layer on this additional things you want to go do. And I think part of what we've been doing together is actually putting those foundations in place that give you the choice, the flexibility, the security. You're an enterprise company. You can't afford to have something that's sort of kind of maybe working.
Yeah, I think what we're highlighting is the big important questions that are wrestled with at the top of organizations never, ever, ever have simple binary answers. You're always talking about a spectrum and where do I lie from A to B? And you don't want to be too slow out the gate and too slow moving because you get left behind. But equally, you run a massive risk here if you don't think far enough that you get a certain distance down with success and then run into a brick wall and basically have to reverse 6 months and turn and come back. I think everybody's got to be thoughtful about, but everybody's also wrestling with what's exactly the right point on that spectrum.
I couldn't agree more. I think this inferencing world, the world of being able to actually solve problems using multiple data sets, agents, working together with us, being able to drive that. I think this is the most exciting part. And one of the things we introduced that I thought was incredible was this idea of taking our own foundation model, giving it to our customers. They can put their own data into that model, so they create their own, what we call novellas. But, this idea of actually putting tools in the hands of people that are actually secured in a way that you can go experiment at scale, but knowing your data is in the right place, et cetera, et cetera.
I think the other aspect of that is how do you enable companies building those novellas with you to know that when the underlying core model steps forward, that they don't have to start again with the localization that they've done. Like otherwise, it's a constant forward and back. That's been one of the discussions we've had with obviously not just yourself, but other LLM providers is, look, how do you make sure that if we go put 6 months of effort into this and then you roll the model forward, that we haven't just lost everything we just did?
100%. Just going back to your strategy and all the work that you've been doing at Booking. And one of the things I've always picked up in many conversations with many of you at Booking has been this whole idea of the connected trip, the connected experience. Can you share a little bit about what you're doing around this idea of a connected trip? What's your vision around it? What's working?
The connected trip itself comes out of the fundamentals, very straightforward assumption that if you can take friction out of the universe for the customer, they're going to be happy. Long predates Gen AI. You tend to book your accommodation in one place, your flight in another, your ground transport in another, your things to do in another. It just seems logical and straightforward that, if we can bring this into one place, it's going to help everybody. How many times have we taken one click out of a conversion path online and more people make it through that flow? So if you take multiple products out, hey, it stacks up. And then you've got the opportunity to layer over top of that, then better understanding of the individual, better personalization, better value over time. Our Genius loyalty program comes in, just as Prime does for yourselves. Genius is quite comfortably the largest travel loyalty program I think that there is on the planet. And it serves you across verticals, across geographies, from high end to low end, et cetera. So that's where the origins of the connected trip is. And in the end, it's the idea is it's connected in multiple ways. Yes, it's multiple verticals, multiple travel things you can book in one. But the connected is also, we remember context about you. If you came yesterday and searched for flights to Barcelona and you come tomorrow to search for accommodations, it's not 100%, but the likelihood that Barcelona is where you're going to go is probably quite high. Thinking about your preferences from the past, do you want the window seat or the aisle seat? Are you a home type property booker or are you a front desk in a restaurant preference? Does that look different when you're a business traveler than when you travel with your family? Almost certainly, and so on. So that's the idea of the connected trip. Gen AI makes a massive difference here, I think, in 2 or 3 ways. We've always been able to do good work with ML and traditional AI in terms of recommendations, etc. We've done that pretty well. Gen AI allows it to be stronger. There's no doubt about that. Upper funnel and discovery and itinerary building is something that 2-3 years ago was a really complicated problem we really weren't putting an enormous amount of effort into. We were being honest about it with ourselves and saying, hey, we feature further down the intent funnel. But Gen AI opens that up for us. It allows trip planning, itinerary planning to be done in a very different way. The other is Gen AI is great at pattern recognition, which means it's great at recognizing gaps. So it's actually really good at looking at what you're going to do on your trip and pointing out issues. Did you realize you've got a day missing in terms of these accommodation bookings? Is that intentional? Or did you just click the wrong date by mistake? And we've all done that somewhere along the line, right? We tried to line things up and realized we've either booked 2 on the same night or missed something. So there's pattern elements that come into it. And then I think probably most interesting over time, we're just starting to see it go there with products like Canvas, for example, is that Gen AI is going to enable dynamic UIs. I think the idea that you can create a UI that is specific to the ask, the situation, the task, the customer, a set of template boxes where you're personalizing the content, but ultimately the structure is extremely fixed. That's a very different future universe to where we are today.
Absolutely. I know we're running out of time, but I did have a couple of quick questions. You've been at Booking for a really, really long time. It's got this incredible culture of building, experimenting, data-driven, constant. Is there a feature or idea that never saw the light of day, but you secretly loved or still think about?
I think in some ways, the one that we couldn't make work at the time, whereas now is live, the one that stands out in some ways was the ability you had to shift your post-booking service into self-service and into dynamic FAQ, etc. We had a go at that about more than 10 years ago now. And we just didn't have the technology and the capability to be accurate enough and precise enough in what it was that was being asked. Because every trip is different, every customer is different, every property has a different set of policies. So we don't have like 10 customer service procedures. We have hundreds and hundreds, and it wasn't precise enough. And now you look at what you can do now and what we've got live now, both on voice, et cetera, it's a different universe in the powers. That's probably the one that I think we loved and couldn't get to work at the time and with deep regret, had to take back. And another one that we had that I think will probably come back again, we used to have something called a destination finder. And what a destination finder did was, in a very relatively unnuanced but effective manner, we used to ask people, what's the area good for? Wine, theaters, music. Now, if you just counted the recommendations, by the way, it was a useless feature, because guess what? New York, Paris, and London would be top of everything just by volume. But then you started to go, well, okay, what if I do this by percentage? And suddenly you'd go, what's good for wine? And you'd get this place that you'd never heard of, that when you went and looked it up on the internet was a tiny village somewhere in the Loire Valley that was famous for X, Y, or Z. We couldn't get customer interest at the time. I think it was too much of a discovery element when the rest of our platform was super transactional at the time, if you want to call it that. Again, I feel like now you're going to be able to knit those pieces together, but that was probably something that we almost had ahead of the time, and we were too early with it, and it probably would have worked 3 years later than we actually had it up and running.
I love it. Any last final words of advice to our listeners? One practical tip that you would leave for other leaders like yourself?
The first part of my advice is, if you're going to do something a lot and you're going to do it for a long time, and you asked me early on, why have I still here after this period of time? It's heavily because I enjoy it. And I think we underestimate that. We spend a lot of hours with what we do at work. If you don't enjoy it, it's difficult to get the energy and then therefore the output. And the second, I'll go back to what I said before. I think that courage is key. Like, the technology is going to be able to do things that we couldn't believe it could possibly do. That doesn't mean it can do all the things that human ingenuity can do. And I think the more that you offload things you're doing now and create brain space, the more benefits you're going to drive down the line.
I love it. Courage and fun. On that, thank you, James, for giving me your time. And it's been fun working with Booking.com. And I know we're going to be doing lots of lovely things together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Executive Insights, brought to you by AWS. If you enjoyed this episode, help us spread the word by rating and reviewing. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.